some of the people who wanted to attend that could not attend are able to watch and have the benefit of your questions and your thoughts. So as we go forward in this process, we'll be able to address them and to share the answers that we gave with other people as well. So I just had somebody else jump on, and so I'll repeat that again. I am recording this, so this is documented and such, and it also stops me from having to write the whole time as well. So it's certainly be good to look back at this. We have about an hour, and so we have a lot to get through, but the most important thing we can do today is to answer any questions you have that makes your decisions and your development a little easier for you, and to know exactly where we're coming from and ask those tough questions. So I'm going to start with today with having the city employees introduce themselves, and then we're going to have our economic development partners introduce themselves. And then I would like it if each company that's represented here is willing to introduce yourself and your company as well. Again, that way I have it on the record. So I've already introduced myself. Why don't I go, let's start with Carl.
Yeah, very good. My name is Carl Bjarke. I'm the interim public works director. And for purposes of this project, that would be the engineering and utilities.
Okay, Karen.
Good afternoon, Karen Garner, Community Development Director. So probably mostly involved with the land use side of things on this and zoning.
Okay, and Trevin.
Good afternoon, Trevin Barber, Senior Management Analyst with Public Works and the City Administrator's Office.
Okay, good. Next, we're going to introduce some of our economic development partners, and the key word in this is partners. They were very, it's hard to say helpful because that it really undermines the contributions that we've gotten from this group, who have really helped us along as a city and an organization. So why don't we start with Jane?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jane Howard. I wear several hats. I'm the Executive Director of Visit Gilroy and the California Welcome Center here in Gilroy. I'm also a board officer for the Gilroy Gardens Board of Directors, and then also one of the founders of the Gilroy Economic Development Partnership.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mark.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? I'm having some problems with my internet. Is it good? I am Mark Turner. I'm the president of the Gilroy Chamber of Commerce, and like Jane, I'm one of the founding partners of the Gilroy Economic Development Partnership.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, Hua.
Hi, Hua Lei, Assistant General Manager for Gilroy Gardens Theme Park.
Okay, so from the city side, you have just about every person you need here. You have the gardens out there, you have city planning and engineering, and then you have our economic development partners who can talk about the region and the area, and really anything and everything you wanted to know about the garlic capital of the world. So with that, why don't I go through our participants here, and why don't we start with Adrian? If you just introduce yourself and tell us who you're with, please.
Sure. I'm Adrian. I've also got Chris Sutton on the line here. We're with Select Contracts, so
okay.
Yeah, we're up in Canada. Chris is just driving, so he's listening in, but might not talk here.
Okay, is that Chris on 1706?
No, I think he's. I see the logo for Select Contracts.
Oh, okay, got you. Okay, no problem. Okay, Dave Johnson.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is David Johnson. I'm an architect and a planner. I'm with Sarah Architects, working out of Oakland.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Is that Mike O'Connell?
Hi, Mike O'Connell here. I'm with BKF Engineers. We're a civil engineering and land surveying company in the Bay Area, and interested in seeing which developers are interested in this RFP to find out how we could support the project.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Pa. I'm also with BKF and just ditto everything Mike's just said.
All right. Okay, I believe Chris, as Adrian said, is on the Select Contracts. Introduce yourself, Chris.
Yeah, hey, this is Chris Sutton. So I work with Adrian. We develop downhill mountain bike parks, surf parks, leisure attractions all over the world. So we've been working on this project for the past 4 years. So super keen to see where it goes next.
Well, thank you, Chris. And then I have a phone number of 1706 ending.
Yes, this is Ivo with Walltopia Design Build company based in Bulgaria. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I've been in Gilroy many times, especially for the Garlic Festival, one of my favorite places. And we're very excited to have the opportunity to be on this conference call and learn more about the project.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think that has everybody we have on here. So we're going to do about 4 or 5 things here in the next hour. And right now we're going to do the welcome and overview. I'll do that for you. And then Jane Howard, who you just met, is going to give you a presentation about the history of that area and its current use and some ideas for use and you know, a little bit of a, you know, the overview of that property. And then we will do an RFP overview from David Zender. Oh, I forgot to. David, are you here?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. I forgot to introduce our other partners. They probably feel so left out. That was terrible of me. Go ahead, David and Mark.
David, you put yourself on mute there.
Hi, I'm David Zender, Managing Principal with Economic and Planning Systems. We've been assisting the city in preparing the RFP and do a lot of work in public-private partnerships. Mark?
I'm Mark Paul-Hemus, Senior Associate with Economic and Planning Systems out of our Sacramento office and assisting with this project.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, David and Mark. Sorry about that. Yes, EPS has been instrumental in helping the city through this. It's not every day that we issue an RFP for 536 acres of city-owned land. And so David and Mark have really guided us and helped us get to this point. So they are very much a part of the process and can help us out today as well. So, okay, now I've got all the introductions done. And then, so we'll get an RFP overview, submission requirements from EPS from David. And then we're going to open up question and answers. And so please ask us anything. I'm confident that we'll be able to answer just about anything, but if we don't, we'll write it down and we'll get it back out to the group later and we can get you a good answer. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the schedule and next steps over the next few months as we go down this process. So I'll start you off as to the, you know, the basics about why we're here. A few months ago, or maybe 9 months ago, when you know, COVID-19 hit, the city of Gilroy's economy, just like everybody else's, took a significant hit. And some of the people who really think about the economy in town, Jane Howard, Mark Turner, our friends out at the garden says, well, what are we going to do to, you know, to move forward from this? What can we do to position ourselves to have an economic recovery that's just not based on the growth of sales tax or transient occupancy tax? What can we use that's our assets to help our economy grow and to define it in a way that maybe we haven't defined it before? So this group put together a resolution for the city council to consider, and it was a resolution to designate basically the city of Gilroy as a recreation destination. And that sounds pretty general, but when you read the resolution, it gets down to 3 significant assets, 2 of which are owned by the city. The first asset is the city sports park, which is it's a softball, soccer, it's up against agricultural land, has a lot of expansion opportunities. Second is what's called Gourmet Alley, which is part of downtown. You know, if somebody spoke of the Garlic Festival a few minutes ago, that is a characteristic of the city of Gilroy is good dining, good garlic, and good times in that sense. So that alley is not owned by the city, but the city has certain parts of it that is an important partner in trying to develop that. And then lastly, the 536, which is a term that was created so that we all knew what we were talking about, because very few cities have 536 acres of land that they own up against a mountain ridge. Top of the mountain, you see the ocean. The other way, you see the entire valley. So it is land that is unbelievably opportunistic for somebody with a little bit of creativity and some venture capitalism to come and look at and say, hey, I got an idea. I think we should do this out there. So the reason why we are here today is all those steps, but is also to proceed with the city being a recreation destination And so in discussions with our city council and with our partners throughout the community, the idea was like, well, let's see what people's ideas could be for what we have out there. As you know, we currently have an amusement park called Gilroy Gardens out there, and it has been out there for many years. And I'm going to hold off on talking about that because I don't want to take Jane's thunder, but she's going to give you a good, analysis of what that park has done and what it could be and how it might or it might not fit into any proposals that we receive. So we're looking for people with ideas. We have the land. Our arms are open, and we are hoping that somebody wants to come and do something great, because we are in a great situation here with this land, the location, the population density that's not too far away, and we do truly believe if you build it, that people will come. So we are looking for a collaborative entrepreneurial approach, and we're looking for a business partner, and we're looking for somebody to be creative. We have the land. We don't have we don't have a lot of money sitting around to develop. But we have certainly some things that we can offer someone who does. And so that's what we're here to explore. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jane, who's really going to talk about the property in much greater detail than I can, and be able to answer any questions you have about some of the history and such. So Jane has a PowerPoint. I'm going to bring it up, and then Jane, you just tell me next slide, and I'll do that.
I will do that, Jimmy. Thank you. And I've got Wally here, who's the Assistant General Manager for the garden here also to answer any questions. Wall, of course, is on site with operations. So if there's any questions about how the park currently operates, we'll go to Wall with that. But with that, you can see our beautiful circus trees here. If any of you have ever been to our park, this is what we originally were known for, and it has expanded since then. But again, I'm going to talk a little bit about our early years, our city sale, and our strategic plan. So if you want to go right on to the next slide, Jimmy. And you've got your overview. Again, our general manager, Barb Brancher, sends his regards. Unfortunately, she had already committed to being on a flight at this time. She's a Canadian. Well, she was a Canadian, but she's actually going back home for the holidays. So she's on a flight. But Juan, we'll walk you through this from a perspective of the history, the site overview, and the current land uses. Next slide, Jimmy. So the early years, this actually goes back to June of 2001, and it was known as Bonfani Gardens. Originally, it was 576 acres, and it was privately owned by the founder and the builder, Michael Bonfani. Incorporated as a 501c3, which is a big deal for our organization, with a local volunteer board of directors. It also, that board includes the City of Gilroy representative. So this property's had a lot of history. It started in 2003 when the board contracted with Paramount Park to operate. In 2005, 40 acres of that 576 was sold off to Eagle Ridge subdivision, which is adjacent to the 536. And in 2006, Cedar Fair takes over Paramount, and the gardens at that time changes its name for the board of directors to Gilroy Gardens. 2007, the city purchased the land and the assets and leases back all 536 acres to the nonprofit board, Gilroy Gardens, Inc. Next slide. So in 2007, when the board of directors approached the city with an offer to purchase the 536, the goals and values of the transaction were the city controlled the 536, the sustainability of the gardens, opportunities for city services at that time, possibly relocating the courtyard, parks and rec programs that the city might operate out there, a public park, and possible future public access to the trails which are adjacent to the 536. And of course, an ROI for the tourism and the jobs for the youth. And so in the next 10 years, the garden focused on a strategic plan. So this is more history about how we've operated. We've had a 10-year deferred maintenance plan. We've had a 5-year capital plan. And that 5-year plan has been implemented. In 2014, we did a water oasis. In 2015, we installed the green barn, which is the educational component of our gardens. In 2016, we brought in illumination, which is a special display that was brought in from China and was a great success. And then in 2017, the Water Oasis expansion occurred. Also in 2017, we contracted with JRA, Jack Rouse and Associates, for a conceptual master plan of all 536. And in 2017, we also worked with Whitewater for a water park concept design. All along this time, the board has been looking at how do we not only support what Gilroy Gardens has, but how to enhance it. And anyone who's in this theme park world knows you constantly have to be adding to what you have. In 2018, we had an adventure park concept design that was brought to us by Select Contracts. 2019, we did economic impact analysis and of an existing business, but also some possibilities with the expansion. And that was conducted by EPS, who is also assisting the city with this particular project. And then in 2020, the city of Gilroy and the city council said, let's go out for an RFP on the 536. And that's where we are now. So the 536 actually breaks down into 3 major sections. That's the existing theme park, which is about 50 acres. That includes the theme park, the parking, and operational support. The visitor serving commercial is about 100 acres of underutilized space, and it surrounds, it's not all together, but it surrounds the Gilroy Gardens operations. And then the hillside, which is about 350 to 400 acres of open space. So here's our map. So this, again, when you're looking at the plan key on the right side, and then you look at how the map looks, this is what our master plan that was created by JRA, this is what the board approved. And this is what we have been looking at in terms of future development. So I won't get into a lot of detail other than you can see by the colored areas, the proposed theme water park, if we ever had the dollars to do that, the expansion of our water oasis, a proposed adventure climb zone, and then also a science lab and a living lab. Again, as a 501c3, we have an educational focus about the gardens, which was actually, that was the passion of Michael Bonfani when he started this place. And that 501c3 continues to operate, and we have an education component that's part of our operations. You can also see parking lots and then also any future visitor serving commercial. And rather than getting into the details or questions right now, Jenny, I think I'll just go through this and then we can go back to see if there's questions about this. So more drawings again. This comes from RGA, which is one of our local companies, and you can see that 350 to 400 acres that we talked about for the hillside, where Gilroy Gardens is located, and then our future visitor serving commercial, and the property boundary. This particular Google Earth, it just, when we look at this, every time we see, we're going, wow. This is actually looking south. So when you look to the right, that's actually the Monterey Bay Area. You're looking at that's how close we are when you're looking over the hill. So again, not your typical way of looking at a map, but again, looking south, this is Monterey Bay on the right. One of the key things that the board of directors has also always been considering, and now the city, of course, is how the close Gilroy Gardens is connecting to the Bay Area Ridge Trail. And you can see this trail, again, throughout the Bay Area and into further north of into Northern California. And one of the key things that we'd like to do and hope to see is that there would be this trail connection completed as part of the 536 project. So the current land use of the theme park, that includes areas for our corporate picnic grove, our overflow parking, event uses when we have special events. We have a merchandise warehouse, maintenance shops, print shop, power and water, and we've also got a reservoir and dam on the property. That is all part of how this Gilroy Gardens operates. And there are different components of how Gilroy Gardens raises revenue, and those different land uses contribute to that. Again, here, this is a nice layout of how the various entities I just noticed, or I just talked about, are laid out. You can also see up in the near 152, we've got a leased area for Cal Fire Station. The reservoir, as I mentioned, is on that lower left. Again, another view of how this park is laid out. To the right there is what that 40 acres was that Michael Bonfanti sold for the Eagle Ridge development. And here we've got, again, a better feel for what other amenities are around this area. And if you'll notice, we're right in the midst of the wine region. This is the Santa Clara Valley wine region near our Gilroy Municipal Golf Course. We call it the Hecker Pass Corridor of Tourism. And farther up on 152 is our Mount Madonna County Park. So again, this whole area is all part of this recreation tourism concept that we've been looking at. And with that, we could open it to questions. There's a lot there.
Jimmy, I might suggest perhaps I can just go through some of the highlights on the RFP, and then we can turn it over to questions for all three of us, if that works.
Sounds good.
That sounds great.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to do a little screen share. If you can turn on, can you allow me to do a screen share there, Jimmy?
Sure. I'm working here. Okay, you should be able to.
Okay. Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so that was a great overview there, and so I'm not going to spend too much more on the physical attributes of the property. Okay, so as we think about the RFP process, we've gone to great lengths to try to make this as clear and clean as possible for developers to respond to. We recognize that in this current environment overall, there's risk in the environment. And clearly this is a sector that has been hit by COVID. There's no doubt about it in terms of travel and some of the other elements. All that said, we do believe that in the tourism sector, one of the near-term opportunities is drive to markets. And so I think Gilroy is one of these sort of lends itself to is high-end. And we do spend a little time talking about sort of proximity to San Jose International and just the regional access that the site enjoys. So just to hit some of the key highlights in sort of the guts of the RFP. So I've skipped to page 8 of the RFP here on the screen. And here we basically cover some of the land use and program objectives. Clearly, so as mentioned, the city owns all 536.2 acres. And you were just given sort of the history of all this, so we don't need to belabor that. Going forward, obviously, this is a situation where the city has a full schedule of impact fees. We've tried to make those available in attachment A to the RFP, so that should be something you can consult and understand. This being California, clearly we have prevailing wage. And so this is a delicate one always in these circumstances. We understand that in a project like this, there's a great opportunity for what we would refer to as a public-private partnership. And that means that the city's very interested, has sort of a alignment of interest with the development community to try to sort of grease the skids, if you will, to make this project happen as effortlessly and without risk as possible. So as we think about prevailing wage and so forth, the city will be your partner in terms of looking at how to structure a project that, if desired, does not trigger prevailing wage and therefore keeps costs down. Some of the development objectives, we're looking for a qualified developer that would be interested in a long-term ground lease. The city has a lot of flexibility in terms of the overall lease term considered. We expect that a property like this would be subject to a longer term lease, but we'll be sort of listening to the development community and the response to this RFP to see what you all think. In terms of phasing, sequencing, timing, this is another case where the city can really help the developer by not necessarily offloading the entire thing all at once. If there was a phased takedown schedule, this sort of helps to mitigate risk and seems to work with the overall phasing of the project's development, then the city would be willing to structure an arrangement such as that. Clearly, again, being California, as we look at the ultimate project, we will need to consider getting through the CEQA process. We do have neighbors in the area, as was shown in the earlier presentation. The folks on the ridge there are sophisticated and knowledgeable and well-heeled. So, they will be by definition at the table to a certain degree through their city council members and so forth. But we do need to be respectful of their reactions to the project. And I think that's something that obviously any developer would. As we think about financial and business objectives, the city has a few sort of key objectives. One is that as we go through the negotiation process, it is envisioned that one of the first steps upon developer selection would be to create an exclusive negotiation agreement, or an ENA. And the ENA would define basically cost sharing for the negotiation process, and then also define sort of the agreements that the city and the developer would have to complete in order to initiate development. In terms of compensation, this is not a situation where we're going to pick anybody based on some unrealistic or sort of gargantuan number that somebody puts out there. This RFP is to really understand a developer's logic, sort of how you think about the market opportunity, how that translates to a development strategy. And then given that it's a ground lease deal, sort of how does that translate into to the city in terms of the fair market value of that ground lease? And then what are the provisions that are critical over time? So this is very much a two-way street. It's a partnership opportunity. The city isn't looking at this as sort of a, just hand it off and let it go. I mean, if that's the way that it needs to be, if a developer were prepared to take it and run and the city was aligned with that interest, that would be a possibility as well. But my point is that this is a situation where there is an open-minded entity in the form of the city that is willing to work with the development community in order to specify or customize a project deal structure that works for everybody. Okay, so that's the idea there. So as we approach the city's role here and its commitments, talking about sort of an as-is ground lease. But again, if there are things that a developer feels are imperative that the city do prior to a ground lease, then we're all ears. So, this is, again, a two-way street. In terms of uses and zoning and so forth, I think it's important to note that the emphasis here is really on what we call mixed use, hospitality, and retail village. Possible that there could be employee housing on the site, but the idea of the project is not one of building a housing-driven project. Housing could be a bit of a stretch based on various concerns, including the neighbors in the periphery. We have to be very sensitive to that. But we're also sensitive to what works economically, and the city is very interested in receiving the development community's best thoughts and strategies as they describe their interest in this project. Okay. I should mention that we can provide timing. We can provide access to the site if you're interested in coming out and taking a look. And that might be good. It's a beautiful site. I think that image really gives you a sense of the natural beauty of the area. And we view this in our last year's economic development strategy that we did for the city. We looked at the sort of the base land on the flat part of the site as sort of the base village for the hillside area. And some of the ideas that have been proposed for the hillside area in terms of mountain biking and zip lines and horseback and other things are really interesting, very exciting. And so you can almost think of this as, you know, sort of a resort concept with a base village. And then we do acknowledge that there is a current facility in the form of Gilroy Gardens on the site. We're open to your ideas in terms of whether that can be built upon, expanded, leveraged, or if you have other ideas in terms of you know, if you thought that there needed to be more fundamental changes made, those are also acceptable in terms of your proposals. So we're really looking for a candid, honest take on what the best abilities for this site are that are within reason, that can be funded, that can be executed successfully. Okay. So some of the responsibilities of the selected developer, and these are not the submittal requirements, but this would be what we expect once we're under, we've made our selection and we're in negotiations. And then when those negotiations are culminated, these are some of the things that we see embedded in that overall process. So we would hope the developer would create an updated or new site plan for the project, including phasing and so forth, provide and secure all necessary entitlements to implement the project along the lines of a business plan that we would negotiate or consider in the negotiations. And within that business plan, obviously, we're interested in understanding sort of what the developer's capital stack looks like, what are your sources of equity and debt, and so forth. And also sort of what are your thoughts about sort of how to improve infrastructure, and then phasing and takedown concepts as well, as mentioned earlier. All right, so for the submittal itself, some of the things that we're looking for here, item A would be concept, leasing, phasing, and market. So this isn't to say we need a large formal market study or anything of that nature. We really are looking for your expertise in this market, reading where we are in this recovery out of COVID and the economic situation that has come along. And then how do we emerge from where we are today into a viable implementation program? And so what would you think about, this is really just to see evidence of your logic and understand sort of your strategic elements, okay? Those would include, you know, market and financial considerations. So kind of, you know, where do you think the best opportunities are? The city obviously needs this project to work in terms of generating offsetting funding for any services it might require. And so one of our hopes is that some visitor accommodations could be included in the overall project concept that would generate TOT and those service costs. Financial and business objectives. Again, we're looking for something that is justifiable, that is fair in terms of compensation for the land. The intent is to receive fair market value for the property. That you know, is under the context of a ground lease. And here we're very interested, probably more interested in understanding how you would calculate or propose to calculate those ground lease payments to the city. than the absolute magnitude of the payments themselves as we stand right now. I think there's a lot of speculative thinking. Not everybody knows where we are economically. I think it would be tough to peg an exact projection of lease payments per se, but we'd be very interested in your logical process of defining how you would calculate those lease payments, and then perhaps show us a couple of scenarios in terms of if the world looks like this, then this might be a lease payment that you would see based on this formula. So that's the idea in terms of payments. Financial management, again, we're looking to understand the commitments that a developer would be willing to make, where the capital stack originates from, and any information you can provide about the sources of debt and equity in terms of who your partners are financially, and then sort of how that rolls out during the project. Again, operations and maintenance, we need to make sure that the overall economic proposal that that you are understanding that the city cannot be on the hook to maintain this property unless it's being compensated to do so as a deal term or something of that nature. But the project needs to be self-sustaining overall, and that's the major point. Okay, litigation, disciplinary action, don't need to spend too much time on that. Development team here, we're basically looking for who are the principals on your team in terms of looking at the market, understanding the development opportunity, understanding the financial structure, and how to basically take down the property and improve it in phases if that's desired, and exactly sort of who would be involved in this process, and the background on those key individuals. Okay. So in terms of how we look at this when we receive the proposals, these are the selection criteria that we'll be looking at: responsiveness to economic objectives and land use objectives, the overall approach, the financial health of the developer, the conceptual payment approach and schedule that we talked about just a moment ago, your experience and track record in doing projects of this type and other related projects that perhaps include hospitality, entertainment, etc. How you're organized as a team would be important. And then very importantly, as I mentioned earlier, sort of community outreach skills. How do you deal with very sophisticated and thoughtful citizens that are mainly interested in protecting the health of the city and their neighborhoods? So I think this is going to be a pretty important element. And then, of course, the quality of the submittal in terms of being clear and brief and so forth. So that is sort of an overview. And I won't spend too much time. I think Jimmy will come back at the end and walk you through schedule. So I won't spend too much more time on this. So with that, I think we can move directly into Q&A.
Yeah, definitely. So I will funnel the conversation or the questions in and try to shoot them out to where I think they might want to go, but I'm certainly not in control of everything. So just let me know if you need to pipe in or add something else. So go ahead.
Yeah, this is Ivo with Walltopia. I have a question. Since we're not a developer, I mean, we have quite a good experience in we are a supplier, design build supplier for amusement equipment, adventure parks, etc. And since we're not the developer, how can we get connected with the interested developers who want to work on this project so we can collaborate with them somehow?
I think that's David, right?
Sure. So yeah, that is a good point. And so we have basically advertised through a press release. We've posted it on the city's webpage. We've done outreach to some of the amusement park associations. And we've pushed this out to some other folks that track RFPs and whatnot. I think that there's a certain expectation that there will be some scrambling after this conference call as people gain an understanding of the project, and will be sort of searching out some of the key entities that specialize in this type of development. Now we know that Select Contracts is on this call, and I'm sure that after this conference we can release the names and email addresses of the folks that were on this call. So you should be able to talk to anybody that was on this call to further your discussions and to begin the networking process. It's sort of our expectation that coming out of this process, that folks like the planners and engineers and others that we see on this call will have sort of networks of developers that they may think are appropriate after this initial screening process is sort of completed. So it would be an expectation that most folks would be scrambling over the next couple of weeks to make those connections. And then, of course, open the process until January 19th, I think, is the submission deadline. So there's still a good amount of time here prior to that to make those connections and bring it together.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next. Okay, Dave, go ahead.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, David. Thank you, everyone who's prepared a presentation today. We really appreciate it. I just want to reiterate what the previous speaker had to say, that we have interest from a potential tenant, but they aren't capable of being a lead applicant or proponent. And so we would very much, at the earliest convenience, like to have access to interested parties that are looking at being a lead. So just if you can help us facilitate that matchmaking process, that'd be great. And I'll put my contact information in the chat box as well, just to get it going. And then my second question, are we going to have a chance today to get a better understanding of any due diligence that you have done regarding offsite infrastructure improvements? Given the size of the project that you are describing in the village, have you started to characterize what the offsite infrastructure improvements might be?
Yeah, David, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, Jimmy, I think this is a situation where, of course, everything starts with the development concept in terms of, what are we looking at? Would it be a hotel or 2 hotels? Would it be an expansion of the park? What would be the visitation drivers? And then once we understand a little bit more about that, then we can think about sort of off-site capacity, interchanges, or sewage, et cetera, and go through that sort of process of working with City Public Works to understand sort of what we're up against in terms of needing to make any capacity improvements, whether on or off-site. But I think what I would suggest is perhaps Carl, do you have any sort of initial observations about infrastructure improvements that are likely to be needed?
Yeah, I mean, what the major infrastructure, when I'm talking about, the roads, the water, the sewer, and the storm drain, are to the perimeter of the site, to the east. Some of it right at the site, some maybe not too far away. So the expectation is going to be that there'll be road improvements leading into the site. There's going to be an extension of water and sewer service into the site. And it's the good thing is that it's fairly close. The best that I can determine, it's pretty close. As you may or may not know, the city just completed its general plan, and they're doing the the thing you do after you do a general plan, and that's a utilities master plan. So that's in the works now. We won't have any findings from that for a few months. We're a few months out from that, but I don't expect anything to come out of that would necessarily impact this project. I think the things that are going to impact the project are going to be what's needed for the project itself. So road improvements, perhaps traffic signal, all that, until we see how everything is going to be developed, it's hard to tell. But most of the infrastructure is nearby. That's probably the good news.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, we were able to answer a couple questions, and you may have more as you think about this. So why don't I look at the schedule a little bit, and we can show you where you'll have some more opportunities to send us questions, and we will summarize those and get those out to everybody. Let me pull this up real quick. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so we are right now in the middle of step one, which is today. And that is the pre-submittal meeting. It is non-mandatory. So if you do come across somebody who wants to get involved in this project or whatever, they haven't missed anything, this was totally optional. We do need all of your questions to the city by next Monday. So if you think of additional things that you've come across, or you run into someone who has a question or a thought, please send it to us. That way we can summarize those. We can post those on our website, listing all the questions that we received and all the responses. That way, all potential respondents have the same information. We will provide those answers to all questions by December 22nd. So right before the holiday break. That'll give you still about a month before the submittal deadline of January 19th. So a little bit of time, knowing people do kind of slow down over the holidays. But yeah, all those questions will be answered by December 22nd. The responses are due on January 19th, 2021. So about, almost 6 weeks away as well. And then we will go into the RFP selection or our evaluation process. This is actual process. We do have some interviews set up. We have been told by our city council that they would like to see, some of the presentations before for their own evaluation as well. So you can expect that it'll be a multifaceted evaluation. There will be city staff. There will be some component of our economic development partners, and then some of our electeds who will ultimately make the decision based on perhaps what we recommend. One thing I can tell you is that staff will evaluate these, but at the end of the day, we have 7 council members, and they can go with just what they really like. They themselves will weigh some factors, and economics, destination or recreation destination compliance kind of things, or they just like that project. So that's the creative part that you get to do. You come up with your ideas and such, and so we're really looking for our council to evaluate this and to have the comfort, and then directing staff to go into an exclusive negotiating agreement period. And so that's when, as David mentioned, we get into some of the more specific things to your ideas, to your RFP response, and of course that would be infrastructure, offsite infrastructure improvements. This and that and some other things. So the ENA will be a 45-day period, and then depending on how that goes, the city may or may not elect to go to the next developer option. I believe that is the extent of the schedule. We do not have a set date for when we expect to be completely done with all that, because as you well know, ENAs can take many different directions. They can take different courses. And so we just want to get that clock started in accordance with the direction from our council. So those are the next steps. That is the schedule. It is a bit aggressive, but the primary reason why it's aggressive is because this is going to be the cornerstone of our economic development recovery, and also in our implement our first major step in implementing the recreation destination that we all want Gilroy to be. So if you have any other questions right now, if we could take one more walk through, if you do have any questions. If not, we can wrap up. Okay. Okay, David, do you have any closing thoughts before we unzoom everybody?
Yeah, I just, on the ENA period itself, I think 45 days would be sort of an initial period by which we would know whether we've got traction and alignment with the selected developer. It's not that we have a notion that we would complete all of the required agreements within that 45. That's really a juncture by which we know if we're headed in a productive direction or not. And if there is sort of a mismatch there, having that initial 45-day sort of juncture allows us to make the adjustment as necessary. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then we'll also, I think one of the questions I think was one of sort of who would be some of the primary development entities that might be capable of taking down a project like that or like this. Recognizing we on this call a number of years and so forth, and a very capable development entity. But we'll give thought if there are obvious players that we think you might want to consider talking with. We'll get together and talk and see if that's something that we can put out there for you in our response. So other than that, I think that's it. I think this is a great opportunity. This is something that, as mentioned, folds right into the city's economic development sort of strategy to gain more export industry and to basically leverage its assets appropriately. So I really appreciate his interest in this.
All right, thank you, David. So the next steps for us as the city is we will get that information of all the attendees back out to you. Please get your questions to us by the 14th, and we will have all of our responses ready by the 22nd. So those are the immediate steps for us. If nobody else has any questions or comments or anything, I do want to thank everybody for taking the time to spend a little bit of time to get to know us a little better. And we're excited to see what people come up with and excited for this project. So please feel to reach me through email if you have any other thoughts or anything you need. But for that, I want to thank you and thank you to EPS and thank you to Jane and Mark and Hua, who are our partners. And we look forward to hearing from you in January.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.